Hello and welcome to the Social Housing Podcast from Voicescape. I'm Peter Hudson, and today I'm joined by a name and face familiar to many of you, Dave Loudon. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Peter. Thanks very much for the invitation. Hope it's nice and sunny where you are, because it's not.
At this time of year in Manchester, that would be a stretch, I'll tell you, Dave. Yeah.
No, thanks.
So you're not at all, not at all. You're a well-known face in the housing technology space. You and I have met at several events over the years. But for those that don't know you, give us an introduction to Dave Loudon.
Yeah, well, as you can hear, I'm Scottish. I've got a wide and varied background, Peter. Dedicated the last just under 20 years to social housing. Before that, I was head of IT for oil and gas companies, telecoms companies. Went to university in Glasgow. Family up in Edinburgh here. And that's me. I have run a number of companies within social housing, detail creative that a lot of folk knew. Unfortunately, we wound up after some struggles during COVID. Tough time, Peter, but bounced back. I'm now doing my own thing with Digital Bark, which is going very, very well. So hopefully we'll keep on that trajectory and do well for the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And what strikes me in all of your roles, it's all about supporting the social housing sector, and it's clearly something that you're passionate about. And it's providing advice, providing support to an incredibly pressured sector. But yeah, so I wanted to come on to the sector actually. I read a recent blog that you wrote where you answered the question, why do you feel that as a sector we're a bit behind the times when it comes to utilising technology? And clearly that's what Digital Bark's about. It's about promoting the use of technology in the sector. So talk to me about that, and why did that blog piece come about?
Well, it's interesting. I've actually wrote about that twice now. The first time I wrote about that was many, many years ago, 10 plus years ago, Peter. In fact, I'll try and hunt it out because it's quite interesting when you look at what it was like 10 years ago to what it's like now. Yes, we're still behind, but we're behind in different areas. Whereas before it was just the adoption of technology, just the latest and greatest technology and systems, and doing it properly and doing digital transformation properly. In fact, 10 years ago, nobody talked about digital transformation. Digital was their word, and there was IT, business systems. Now, where I think we're behind isn't necessarily the adoption of technology. It's the adoption of technology to benefit the customer. We're struggling a lot in society at the moment. Lots of people with the cost of living crisis, and we'll cover this as we go along. Fuel poverty, ASB is on the rise, complaints are rising, mold and damp is rising. So it's fair enough saying we've got technology there, but we're not adopting it as best we can in the light of the customer. And that's the challenge I'm posing to people now. So hopefully that gives you a very, you know, and I know Peter and I could talk about these things for hours. So that's my kind of concise answer, but if you want to delve into it, more than happy.
Yeah, I think I've got some points there that I want to pick up on around digital transformation and about how technology should be serving not only the landlord but also the landlord's customer, the tenant. Ultimately, that's what we're here to do. And yeah, if you can find that blog, I think what we'll try and do is link both of them below, and I think it'd be a really nice journey to show what a decade's meant to our response there. Brilliant. Yeah, very good. So, one thing that, resistance to change is a recurring theme. And I think resistance to change will forever be a recurring theme in all walks of life. We're human beings. We like to know what's about to come next. We know predictability. So resistance to change is a recurring theme. So what do you think drives this culture, particularly with technology or digital transformation adoption in social housing? Do you think it's the fear of failure, or maybe like a lack of innovative spirit, for want of a better phrase?
Well, I'll cover a few things, but first of all, just to pick up on that comment you made there, which is fantastic, the fear of failure. I've been talking about that a little bit recently, and there's a great event, the Disruptive Innovators Network, runs called My Big Fail, and he's doing the second one this year. To be honest, I don't remember if he's actually done it. I don't know whether the time this goes live, whether they'll have done it. But it's a great the problem that we have as leaders in social housing, and I used to be a director, I never mentioned that, and I'm a landlord as well, head of corporate services, and the fear of failure was right. And I think people should be encouraged to try things and should be not worried if they do fail in something. I'm not talking significant change, and I'm not talking about trying crazy things, but the culture is very important to allow people to be able at least to try, and if they fail, to learn the lessons from it. Um, Going back to the original point is, yes, it is all about culture. It is all about how people are educated from the board down. I'm also lucky enough to be a board member of a landlord now, and I see that daily across the sector. And people should be encouraged to look at technology for what it can bring to the customer. But the fear of
Yeah.
failure has to be eradicated, because it is a very risk-averse sector, I
Hmm.
believe. Um, Listen, I get it. I get chief executives are faced with many, many pressures, some of which I mentioned a few minutes ago, about whether they build, whether they don't build, whether they deal with such and such a thing or not, and what's the priority list. And if somebody comes along and
Yeah.
says, I've got a system that can fix all of that, and they typically go, oh, I haven't really got time for that. So
Mm.
digital transformation is a thing where I think education to boards and to management teams. And I'm not talking about teaching people to suck eggs. I'm just talking about simple, this is what can be done. Peter, the phrase we use is
Mm.
art of the possible. And I do things like that, where landlords and the chief executives and the management team say, oh, I didn't realise we could do that with compliance. I didn't realise we could do that with repairs. And you can do with logistics, and with optimization. So the tools are there. You go
Yeah.
back to the earlier point. It's not that we're way behind now. We're slightly behind the curve rather than way behind the curve. So don't ask me to mention whether we're a year behind, because I've given up saying whether we're behind or 5 years behind. Who knows? Because technology changes so much, and we might well get into the AI side of things as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
No, absolutely. And I think, for me, I've worked supporting social landlords for about 12 years now, and I've seen a huge shrink in the gap between commercial sector and social housing sector. And I think that's been driven by two things. So the speed of technology, innovation, but secondly, and that's been housing's appetite for bringing people from out of sector in. And I think that's really driven a lot of that entrepreneurial spirit, that innovative speed of adoption of technology, when we're starting to see people coming out saying, this is the art of the possible because I've done this at XY bank or at this oil company. So I think that's really helped. And we've started to see fundamental housing management system levels, that landscape has changed so much in the last 5 years. We've seen Microsoft Dynamics, we've seen Salesforce come into play. Those weren't even words that we were talking about in that space 5-10 years ago. And long may that continue to, and that's going to push, the big six are going to be pushed, because there's competition, and that's going to drive innovation. I think.
Totally agree with you, Peter.
Yeah.
It's interesting that just to pick up on one of your points there about looking at the sector and the landscape changing. I'll be quite critical for a second, if I may. When I first went into social housing, it was full of old men in grey suits that were
Hmm.
leading the organisation. There's much more
Yeah.
females, there's much more younger people. We're not there with diversity in the boardroom and the management team yet.
Hmm.
But what I would say is that the outlook is great. We once did an exercise many, many moons ago where we brought in a retail organisation, if I can mention them, John Lewis, into a landlord to look at customer service. At the time, John Lewis were the exemplar of customer service.
Yeah.
And the landlord that we worked with on the CRM system were thinking, this is brilliant. If only we could do this with their customers. And they did. And
Yeah.
their satisfaction rose almost overnight. So there is the ability to do that. I absolutely agree. Out of sector is an important thing to learn from.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, digital transformation's so important for any sector to grow and modernize, and we've touched on that a little already. And I think the social housing sector is, or has been, screaming out for change, and we're starting to see that. We're starting to see the tide turn, and that's great. And I think the more landlords that change, hopefully that anxiety level, that fear of failure will start to come down. But you are in a unique position where you get to speak to several landlords up and down the country every single day, every single week. So how well is it being adopted right now? What's the appetite for digital change? And can you give us, and how can others, I suppose, learn from that best practice that you're starting to see out there right now?
Yeah, it is actually, I don't know if it was rampant, but it is absolutely buzzing at the moment in the sector.
Mm,
There is a lot of great initiatives out there, a lot of great innovation,
yeah,
creativity, people using technology better and wisely. The word of digital transformation, I mentioned 10 minutes ago that it wasn't a word that was used a great deal some years ago, but digital transformation is at the top of the agenda now
yeah,
for a lot of organisations, and I think that's a couple of factors to play there. The first one is coming out of COVID, people realised that they were not as they weren't utilising technology as best as they could be, and they've seen how people could work remotely. I don't want to get into that argument about whether companies should work remote anymore or whether they should work hybrid, whatever. So that's the first thing that unfortunately or fortunately, the pandemic actually created a kind of momentum in
yeah,
technology that has never been seen before with the burst
hmm,
of one event. The second one is that people are, as time goes on, their legacy systems are not cutting the mustard, let's say.
yeah,
So they're looking for new systems, new ways of doing things. And that's what digital transformation is about. It's about applying digital services. Again, a lot of the audience will know what it is, but it's about applying digital services to operations and to benefit the customer, whether that's a tenant, whether that's a contractor, or whether that's somebody internally. And that's an important thing. Digital transformation isn't just about bringing in systems that actually say, this will make my life easier in the
yeah,
landlord as a customer, an internal customer. I can do my job faster and easier, and I can see all the data in front of me with a lovely, beautiful dashboard now, and I don't have
mm,
to rely on that manual spreadsheet. What I can do now is say it doesn't just benefit me, it benefits the customer. And I
yeah,
will probably harp on a bit about that today because this is what's important. And digital transformation is the number one tool to do that. I'm absolutely convinced. And going back again, another question was, are our landlords doing it? Yes. Are landlords doing it well? Yes and no.
yeah,
Is there a number of landlords that are not doing it? Yes. The smaller ones, the smaller to medium-sized landlords are not adopting technology as quick as I would think they should do.
hmm,
It's fine for me to spend other people's money, but if they're budgeting now for next April onwards, or the years beyond that, digital transformation has to be at the top of the agenda because it
yeah.
affects so many things.
Yeah, I'm actually going to jump forward a little bit, Dave, because you made such a good point there that I can't not jump on it. And I think that traditionally the sector, and when I say the sector, I mean the technology providers to the sector have been really quite guilty of focusing on what the benefits to the landlord going to be. And when we do that, we focus on return on investment. We talk about efficiency gain. How's this going to affect my officers? But really, what you're saying, and I completely agree with, is our customer's customer should be our focus. We should be focusing on how is this adoption of technology, the digital transformation, really going to make a difference to the lives of the people that are living in those homes. So talk to me about that, and I suppose if and where possible, give me some examples. Where have you seen great adoption of technology to support tenants?
Well, first of all, I think that the important area is that when you're looking at digital transformation and adopting the technology, the first thing to think about is, I mean, this is not so much technical, but as a certainly well-used way, certainly in the States, and if you bear with me here, to do that, when you're looking at systems and when you're looking at digital transformation, my belief is that the way people were doing it before was on a service design, orientated design. So they were all about the service they were given, whether it was ASB, silo, whether it was rents, voids, whether it was dealing with repairs and so on. That's, I think, slightly wrong. And the reason I think that's wrong is because there's another way of doing it, and it's called customer-centric design when you're looking at digital transformation. You put the customer right at the front. You don't ignore your internal customers, but the customer is important, extremely important. And that'll link up to one example of how it's been adopted. Not so much a system or a piece of technology, although that has been applied, but there's some people. The first example that comes to mind is a lady I used to work with at Alliance Homes when I was the interim CIO there, Naomi Sweeting, who's with Grand Union.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know Grand Union, they might even be a customer, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
Aileen Evans has been driving with Naomi once she came in on the whole segmentation aspect of utilising data and technology to understand the customer more. And I think that's one of the most significant sea changes in the sector. I mean, they're not the only ones doing it, but they're certainly, in my opinion, the leaders in doing it.
Yeah.
And they're doing a great job there. There is other initiatives around, and there's a bit of a theme here around data, whereas one of the great adopters of a kind of joint data policy, and I'm a big fan of people, of landlords working together where they can. I'm not talking big data here. I'm not talking about everyone sharing services with the same systems. But what I'm talking about is Withenshaw and the Greater Housing, or the Greater, can we get this right? The Greater Manchester Housing Partnership.
Yeah.
Some of them have got together. You may be aware of this, and I know Jovian Smaley has been a significant part of his team in Withenshaw. That's a great example of how you look at bettering the customer experience through understanding the data. And only when you have good data can you have good systems, so it's understanding, and it's going down the depths of understanding the layers underneath the systems. With many more examples of good systems deployment. But what I would say is, rather than naming a system or a supplier, a landlord, is that I'm seeing a lot more startup businesses, best of breed solutions in all sorts of areas. Whether it's you mentioned Salesforce, okay, fair enough. You mentioned Dynamics and the CRM suites there, and the tools and so on. But there's loads of other smaller organisations that are coming into the sector now. And I think that's a great thing, because they bring with it a customer-centric design more than a traditional housing service design. And they have experience, as you mentioned earlier, in other sectors. So you can see where I'm coming from. It's about innovation. It's about trying things. And I'm not suggesting a best of breed approach in systems design is the ideal. I'm saying you do what's right for you. And if you may give me another minute, Peter, what's important in these areas is that you look at it sensibly. I'm a technologist. I apply technology to business solutions, and I find what's best for the customer, and we deploy it and we transform the business digital transformation. However, there's some business necessities there. You have to have value for money. You have to look at ROI, and you have to look at the total cost of ownership of all of these things. I love those three acronyms. But if you get them together, then the management team, especially the finance director, will love you, because you're thinking, I'm getting some return for this. I'm not just getting a happy customer, I'm getting some savings, and I'm getting some efficiencies.
Yeah.
So there's lots of examples out there.
No, absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned Naomi. So you're right. They are a customer of ours, and I think the reason that Grand Union became a customer so quickly is they very quickly realised that their drive for this psychographic segmentation, that is understanding individual tenants and then delivering a service that's specific to them, so aligns with what we're doing with caseload managers. So it was like a meeting of minds there. So for those that are listening and want to know more about Naomi's work, I actually presented with Naomi on Matt Baird's social housing roundtable recently. So again, we'll pop the link below, but she delivers an incredibly powerful talk about the use of the effective use of data, and actually really understanding the needs of specific tenants rather than making broad assumptions, which is fascinating. And another person I would point people towards is Hannah Harvey, formerly of Saffron Housing, and their desire to use effective data and understand insights so that they can provide customer-centric services. It's so powerful. There's another podcast in this list with Hannah, which I think going down that route is well worth having a listen to.
Yeah.
So yeah, and coming on to that data piece, and I've just talked, and it's just really just your thoughts on this, Dave, rather than asking you to speak at length for 20 minutes about it, as the other two did. But, what challenges do landlords face in managing such vast amounts of data, ones and O's? I met with a landlord recently that has a data lake. Of, I think it was 6 billion lines of data. What are you going to do with that? What challenges do landlords face? The responsibility of that much data and getting anything useful from it.
What a horribly teasing question this is, because this is something I want to speak for hours about, and I'm allowed a couple of minutes. I'm joking. I can summarise it to a degree, because if I focus in ever so slightly for the thousands of smaller to medium landlords, maybe those around 1,000, slightly less than 1,000 to a couple of thousand. In fact, can I give you one example? It's somebody I've been working with.
Yes, please.
And I'm not going to name them, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind me talking about them, because they are in need of some help. It's about 700 properties. It's a landlord where, when we started looking at the data and where it all sits, and what systems they use, they have too many systems for a start, which provides too much data and too much unmanaged, as what other people would call unstructured data. They have they don't even have data as such, because what they do have to manage voids is a whiteboard, right? Unbelievably. And then, but they're doing something about it. So, they're critical as well. This is not me bashing them. For every single area of compliance, whether it be gas, electric, fire, etc., they have a separate spreadsheet with data in it. And we, people like me will always talk about spreadsheets as bad things. Listen, don't get me wrong, I love spreadsheets myself, and when I do it in my own business from time to time.
Yeah.
But what I don't do is rely my whole business and my customer service on a spreadsheet. So the pockets of silos and data sits everywhere, and that's one of the biggest challenges, Peter, is unstructured data. Now, there's tools out there that can manage unstructured data as well as structured, but the problem is that a lot of people aren't even approaching data as a valuable asset. And that's the biggest problem. It's not so much the data and how they manage it, it's the fact that they don't see it as important. But they're being told more and more, and I'm getting calls, and people are, as you said earlier, I talk to a number of landlords on a regular basis as part of my role, whatever that is. And I do know that people are desperate to do something about it. And there's a number of reasons. The legalities of the data is a lot more important and critical than it used to be. I was at a data event in Peter Hudson recently, and that was a really good event where a number of landlords came together, and a few people out of the sector came together to talk about data and data protection. So people are getting bombarded left, right, and centre by having to do things with data. But I would say, to answer the question, which is a really valuable one, is it's still not right at the top of the agenda. But you can see the problem already in this discussion today. So if you're a small landlord and you don't have a CIO, which you probably don't, you don't even have an IT manager, and you have a person in corporate services and or a finance manager dealing with the IT, they're getting told they need to do digital transformation. They're getting told they need to do more with insight. They're getting told to do more with data. They're getting told that their contract with the housing management system suppliers running out. They don't know what to do. And before you know it, there's a foggy cloud around them of confusion. But data has to be right up there. It's the number one, apart from your people. I would say data's the most critical asset an organisation has.
Yeah.
And you've heard the older adage, rubbish in, rubbish out. Sometimes it's, a little bit ruder than that. But it's, but, if you don't manage the data, and my pet hate, I don't know if I've told you this before, but my pet hate is the words data cleansing. Because what is data cleansing? Anyway.
Yeah, no, no, completely. And I think you can, the example you gave there, the landlord, 700 stock, you can start to see that a lot of the technology solutions that are out there might be, to use another analogy, a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. So they might not be suitable for a landlord of that size. That said, there's a risk for a landlord of that size if they're managing voids on one spreadsheet, gas no access on another spreadsheet, ASB on another spreadsheet, that they're missing an opportunity to derive from data what I think is the most critical thing, and that's actionable insight. It's not looking at the ones and O's and the lines of data. It's actually, what can I do with that? What meaningful activity can my housing officer do to make the life of that tenant better, or to make the condition of that property better? What insight can we take? So for me, and that kind of leads on to my next question, which is really quite simple: what are the potential consequences of landlords not using data and actionable insight effectively?
Well, I think, yeah, whether it actually applies to this case, I'm not sure, but I think it probably does somewhere down the line. Data and systems and communication and process are all part of the same thing, really. If I can step back before my example a little bit, one of the issues that the landlords face is around communication, right, with tenants. And to be able to communicate, you need to. So, how does it benefit the customer by having good data? Well, if it's in a structured, managed, easy to get to place, you can give the customer information immediately. You can give them an answer when the repair's getting done. You can give them an answer when the follow up meeting might be. Too many times I've been in landlords and councils over the years where I'm sitting in IT, or I'm sitting somewhere, and I'm sometimes next to the customer service people, and they're talking to landlords and talking to customers, and I'm thinking, I can't even things like, oh, I'll need to get back to you once I find that information, Mr. Loudon. I'll need to get back to you once I talk to, or we'll get somebody to phone you back. Now, I'm going to bring something up, and which is quite emotive in a way, because the sector recently, there was a landlord that was criticised for a tenant's suicide after they had complained for years around complaints, and they complained about noisy neighbour. And the person, the tenant, vulnerable, was certainly vulnerable, had struggled with mental health issues, and the landlord did not deal with it very well. Now, I'm not suggesting that the data was there or the communication was easier through systems. I'm not suggesting that by any means. Just imagine if some of the answers they were given to that poor man were because they couldn't find the information. They couldn't give him an answer because the system wasn't there. And that's what's worrying me these days. There's people, there's also, and I can get quite emotive about these things because I'm passionate about the sector, and I grew up in social housing. I know what it's like, but I also know that there's other areas like compliance, for example. Gas explosions happen up and down the country every year or so. Too many, way too many. Deaths due to inappropriate or inadequate fire door safety. And you put all these things together and you think, well, that systems, is data. Somewhere down the line, somebody's going to say, and if they're in front of a judge or a court, they're going to say, but I didn't have the data to hand. Yeah. Look at just what's happening with the government right now on COVID. It's a similar. They're all saying I don't have the data because my WhatsApp messages were deleted. It's. I'm not going to get political, but it's kind of similar. You need to use the data to help people, and there's many examples, but compliance is one. The big super landlord that had the suicide. Would they have been able to deal with that better if they had better systems? I don't know.
Yeah.
I do worry about it, and I do worry that we're going to see more of this as time goes on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a sad but inevitable position we're in, and I think with social media and the focus right now from the wider media on social housing, we're going to hear more about it, and I think to paint that quite bleak picture of what is the missed opportunity, and the missed opportunity is to make sure that our homes are safer, that people are able to thrive in their homes, that they feel safe, that they feel listened to, And technology and data can really elevate that experience for tenants. So I think if I think about my initial question, that fear of failure, or what's the other question? It's the fear of never trying, right? And I think as a technology provider to the sector, and as a voice in that space, I think my message to people is to absolutely consider, rather than what's the fear of failure, what's the fear of not trying. And I think everything you said, I think we're very much on the same page there, Dave. So it's yeah, very good. Well, we know what, Dave. We're running up to about the half-hour mark, so I wanted to leave this final question with you. So, and given everything we've talked about and your years of experience in the technology social housing space, what message would you like to leave for social landlords regarding their appetite for adopting new technology?
The first message, well, the message is learn more about it. Talk to people like me, talk to other consultants, talk to people like you, and get on LinkedIn, listen to what people are saying. There's groups, and none of this costs anything to give somebody a quick call and say, what do you think about this? There's podcasts like yours, there's the Social Housing Roundtable, there's many other forums. Get using these information streams and learn what technology can do, and don't just doubt it. I think there's too much of that. Or we can't, it's always been this way, we'll just keep doing it that way. But I think education, I think reducing the fear by talking to people that we have mentioned in this call today, like, Hannah, Naomi, and others, and Adrian. Jovian, sorry, not Adrian. I don't know where Adrian came from. And just talk to people, learn that it's not as scary as it could be. And it's not, and here's the other thing, it's not as expensive as it should be either. Or as it could be, sorry, not should be. But yeah, I think just to reduce that fear is go out there and learn what the art of the possible is, and ask questions, join groups, listen to podcasts, and start learning.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Completely. And Ian's doing an amazing thing there with the Disruptive Innovators Network, and it's that sort of big fan as well. Presented recently at his Blink of an AI, which was an incredible event down in London. But I think you're absolutely right. I talked earlier about people coming in from out of sector, and the first thing they will say to you is, what an incredible sector, everybody is willing to share. You go into the corporate world and you're doing well, you're never going to tell your local competitor what you're doing. This sector, people are more than happy to invite you into their office, to jump on a Teams call, to pick up the phone, to provide a written reference about an amazing experience they've had adopting a technology platform, adopting a new way of engaging, adopting a new way of assessing fire safety, things like that. So I couldn't agree with you more, Dave. It's about education. It's about using the resources in the sector, the amazing sector that we both work in and support.
Add one thing to that, and for God's sake, put some money aside, because it does cost something. Get some budgets out there for technology and digital strategies. It would be great if everything was free in this world, but it's not. But I think it has to be up the priority list.
Yeah,
I know the challenges there. Peter, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it really does. Dave, I know you've got some amazing online resources. Where can we find you? What's the website?
Well, the website for Digital Bank is www.digitalbank.co.uk. But as you know, and many folk know, I'm prevalent. Somebody called me Mr. LinkedIn the other day there. So just look for Dave Loudon on LinkedIn, and you'll see me spouting all sorts of advocacy on how technology can benefit the customer in social housing.
There you go. Brilliant. I couldn't agree more. That's how, I was first aware of you, and that's how we started this conversation. So, LinkedIn it is. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's still not sunny here, Dave. I'm not sure how it is with you, but
I'm disappointed, but the sun is coming out in Edinburgh.
Oh, blimey.
Amongst all the kind of nice hues of brown and yellow and green leaves falling off the trees, I've got a bit of sunshine in my eye. I wish I'd never looked up to the sun now, because now
Sorry about that. Hey, absolute pleasure, Dave. It's been brilliant. So, yeah, thanks ever so much, and we'll speak very soon, no doubt.
No trouble.
See you in the summer. Cheers, Dave. Take care. Bye.